Come in before I change my mind. The words that changed everything. What happens when the CEO who destroyed your career shows up at your door begging for help in the middle of a deadly storm? Ethan Walker had every reason to slam that door shut, but sometimes mercy costs more than pride. This is the story of one brutal night that shattered two lives and rebuilt them into something neither expected. The storm hit Brookhaven, Texas, like judgment itself. Ethan stood at his kitchen window, watching the sky turn that particular shade of green-black that meant serious business. The kind of storm that made old-timers check their cellars and young fools grab their cameras. Lightning cracked across the horizon in jagged white veins, illuminating the scrub oak and mesquite trees that bent nearly horizontal under the wind's assault. 6 hours earlier, the sky had been clear. 6 hours earlier, Ethan had been sitting in a conference room watching his career die in slow motion. The boardroom of Meridian Tech Solutions occupied the 8th floor of a glass tower in downtown Houston. All polished mahogany and leather chairs that cost more than Ethan's monthly mortgage used to cost before his wife's life insurance paid it off. 12 board members sat around the table like judges at an execution. 10 men, 2 women, all over 45, all watching him with varying degrees of sympathy or indifference. Claire Donovan sat at the head of the table. 32 years old, Harvard MBA, designer suit that probably cost $3,000, dark hair pulled back so tight it had to hurt. She'd been CEO for 8 months, brought in from some consulting firm in Boston to restructure and revitalize. In that time, she'd made it abundantly clear that she had no patience for what she called mediocrity disguised as effort. Ethan had been presenting for exactly 4 minutes when she cut him off. The interruption came as he clicked to slide 5, the cost-benefit analysis he'd spent 2 weeks perfecting. Her voice sliced through his explanation like a scalpel through skin. "Enough. I've seen enough." The room went silent. Ethan's hand froze on the remote. "This proposal shows a fundamental misunderstanding of our market position." The words came crisp and cold, each syllable a small detonation. "Did you even consider the Q3 projections? Or were you too busy feeling sorry for yourself to do basic research?" The projection screen behind Ethan suddenly felt like a spotlight. 12 pairs of eyes watched him stand there, speechless, while Claire methodically dismantled 3 months of work. "You've assumed labor costs will remain stable, but Q3 forecasts show wage inflation up 12%. You've based your timeline on current supplier relationships that are already deteriorating, and your risk assessment completely ignores the regulatory changes coming in January." Each point landed like a fist. Ethan tried to respond, to explain, but she rolled over him. "This isn't a minor error. This is a fundamental failure of due diligence." She paused, and in that pause, Ethan heard his professional death rattle. "I expect better from my engineers, especially from my former senior engineers." The emphasis on former was deliberate. A reminder that 3 months ago, Claire had demoted him from senior engineer to engineer 2, cutting his salary from $95,000 to $66,000 a year. "Budget cuts," she'd said. "Restructuring. Nothing personal." But everything was personal when it was your ability to pay off your dead wife's medical bills. Parker Hale sat at the far end of the table, 42 years old and VP of Operations, the man who'd wanted Claire's job and lost. He was smiling. Not obviously, but Ethan caught it. The small curl at the corner of his mouth. Sarah Martinez, one of Ethan's fellow engineers, studied her notepad with intense concentration. Mark Thompson examined the ceiling tiles. Nobody met Ethan's eyes. The presentation that should have taken 30 minutes was over in 15. Claire dismissed him with a curt nod, already moving on to the next agenda item before he'd finished gathering his papers. Ethan walked out of that boardroom with his dignity in pieces and rage burning so hot in his chest he thought he might choke on it. The hallway was empty. Ethan pressed his back against the wall and concentrated on breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way the VA counselor had taught him after his discharge from the Marines. 4 years of service, 1 tour in Afghanistan, and he'd never felt as helpless under enemy fire as he did standing in that corporate hallway. Sarah found him there 5 minutes later. "Ethan." Her voice was soft with sympathy that made him want to punch something. "I'm so sorry." She was way out of line. Ethan managed to unclench his jaw enough to speak. "It's fine. Just business." But it wasn't fine. It was 3 months of work dismissed because Claire Donovan needed to prove she was tough enough to run a company full of men who didn't think a 32-year-old woman from the Northeast knew anything about Texas engineering. The drive home took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of afternoon traffic on I-10. 40 minutes of replaying every word, every dismissive gesture, every moment of public humiliation. By the time Ethan pulled into his driveway in Brookhaven, the sun was setting and the sky was starting to darken in ominous ways that had nothing to do with evening. The house was small, 1,200 square feet of aging ranch-style architecture, white paint peeling around the window frames, red tile roof that needed replacing, wooden fence listing slightly in the backyard. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive, but it was paid for, bought with Emma's life insurance money, and that meant one less thing to worry about, even if there were plenty of other things to fill the worry space. Sophie met him at the door before he'd even turned the key. "Daddy!" 7 years old, dark hair that fell past her shoulders, brown eyes too serious for a child her age. She wore purple leggings and an oversized t-shirt with a cartoon elephant on it, holding her stuffed elephant under one arm. The resemblance to her mother was so strong, sometimes it felt like a knife between Ethan's ribs. He crouched down and opened his arms. Sophie crashed into them with the full force of 48 pounds of trust and love. "How was school, baby girl?" "Good. Mrs. Anderson liked my drawing. We learned about the water cycle. Tommy Rodriguez was mean, but I didn't hit him." The last part came out in a rush, and Ethan pulled back to look at her face. "Tom was mean how?" Sophie's expression went carefully neutral, the way it did when she was deciding whether to protect him from something. "Just mean. It's okay." He made a mental note to follow up later. For now, he kissed her forehead and stood up, his knees protesting the movement. 34 felt a lot older some days. "I'm going to make dinner." "Spaghetti?" Sophie's whole face lit up. "Can I help with the salad?" "You bet." The kitchen was narrow, barely room for both of them to work, but they'd developed a rhythm over the past 3 years. Ethan set water to boil, while Sophie dragged her step stool to the counter and started tearing lettuce into a bowl. The normalcy of it helped. Measured movements, familiar tasks, the simple equation of pasta plus sauce equals dinner. His phone buzzed. A text from Frank Rivera, his father-in-law. "How'd the presentation go?" Ethan stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back a single word. "Fine." The phone rang immediately. Frank never believed one-word answers. Ethan answered on the second ring. It wasn't fine, was it? Frank's voice came through rough and knowing. 62 years old, retired construction foreman, Emma's father, and the closest thing Ethan had to a parent since his own had died years ago. Claire Donovan tore it apart. In front of the whole board. That ice queen wouldn't know good work if it bit her on the... Frank stopped himself, probably remembering Sophie was likely within earshot. "She's building her own empire on the backs of good people. You're worth 10 of her." The loyalty was fierce and welcome, even if it didn't change anything. "I appreciate that, but I need to keep this job, Frank. For Sophie." Silence on the other end, heavy with things unsaid. They both knew what that meant. The medical bills from Emma's treatment still bleeding Ethan's bank account dry even 3 years after her death. $47,000 remaining from an original $126,000. The insurance had covered some. The rest was an anchor around Ethan's neck. "You need anything, you call." Frank's voice was gruff. "Your job's to take care of my granddaughter. I can help with money if things get tight." "I know. Thank you." He ended the call before Frank could push harder. Pride was a luxury Ethan couldn't really afford, but he clung to it anyway. Dinner was ready 20 minutes later. Spaghetti with meat sauce from a jar that Ethan doctored with fresh garlic and basil, salad with Sophie's carefully torn lettuce, garlic bread made from the half baguette he'd picked up at the store yesterday. They ate at the small kitchen table, Sophie chattering about her day while Ethan made appropriate noises and tried not to think about the board meeting. After dinner came bath time, then the bedtime routine that had become sacred over the past 3 years. Sophie in her pajamas, elephant tucked under one arm, sitting on her bed while Ethan pulled out the worn copy of Charlotte's Web they'd been reading together. 3 chapters tonight, Sophie announced. 2, it's a school night. Sophie's negotiation face appeared, the one that was pure Emma, serious, determined, impossible to deny. 2.5? Deal. He read until Sophie's eyelids grew heavy, then turned on the turtle nightlight that projected stars across the ceiling. Emma had bought it when Sophie was 3 and afraid of the dark. The stars had helped then. They still helped now. Sophie's voice was already drowsy. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby." "Are you still sad about work?" The question caught him off guard. He thought he'd hidden it better. "A little bit, but I'll be okay." "Miss Donovan was mean to you." Sophie's words were matter-of-fact, not accusatory. "Is she always mean?" Ethan chose his words carefully. "Miss Donovan is under a lot of pressure. Running a company isn't easy. Grandpa Frank says she's a cold fish who doesn't know good work. Grandpa needs to watch his language." But Ethan couldn't quite suppress the smile. Sophie yawned, burrowing deeper into her pillow. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, baby girl. More than anything." He waited until her breathing evened out into sleep before he allowed himself to move. The hallway was dark, lined with photographs that documented a life interrupted. Wedding pictures from 8 years ago, Emma in white lace and Ethan in his dress uniform, Sophie's baby pictures. Then, after a noticeable gap, just the 2 of them learning to smile again. The last photo of all 3 together hung at the end of the hall. Emma had been sick then, her scarf hiding what chemotherapy had taken, but her smile was genuine. She'd always been good at genuine. 3 years gone, and some days it felt like 3 lifetimes. The kitchen felt too quiet after Sophie's presence. Ethan poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon, the good stuff he saved for bad days. And brother, this qualified. The first sip burned going down, familiar and warming and absolutely inadequate for the anger still churning in his gut. He pulled out the folder of bills waiting on the counter. Electric, $187. Gas, $94. Sophie's after-school program, $420 a month. His truck needed new tires, maybe new brakes, and was pushing 180,000 miles with an ominous knock in the engine he'd been ignoring for 2 weeks. The math was simple and brutal. $66,000 a year came out to $5,500 a month before taxes. After taxes, closer to $4,200. Mortgage was paid off thanks to Emma's insurance, but everything else added up fast. Food, utilities, Sophie's activities, the medical bills with their monthly payment plan. He'd been managing barely before the demotion. Now the margins were razor thin. Another hit like today's, and he'd have to start making choices. Pull Sophie from her dance class. Stop the monthly trips to see Frank. Cut back on groceries in ways that mattered. The bourbon was half gone when the first crack of thunder rattled the windows. Ethan looked up, pulled from his spiral of calculations, and saw the sky through the kitchen window had gone dark green. His phone buzzed with an alert. Flash flood warning for Jefferson County. Seek shelter immediately. Do not attempt travel. Ethan stood and walked to the window. The storm was rolling in fast, clouds boiling across the sky like something alive and angry. Wind bent the trees in the yard almost horizontal. Lightning forked down in brilliant white streaks that left after images. He checked the emergency supplies. Flashlights with fresh batteries, bottled water, first aid kit. The generator in the garage was fueled and ready. Old habits from his Marine days, always prepared for the worst. The worst arrived at 7:45. 40 miles north, Claire Donovan was driving through the same storm and realizing she'd made a terrible mistake. The Mercedes GLE was a rental, $89 a day from Hertz, because her own car was in the shop after an incident with a parking garage pillar she didn't want to think about. The leather seat smelled new and chemical. The dashboard glowed with more information than she needed, and the windshield wipers, even on their highest setting, were losing the battle against the rain. Noah sat in the back seat, 9 years old and scared, clutching his backpack like a life preserver. "Mom, we should pull over." "We're almost home, baby. Just 30 more miles." The words came out more confident than Claire felt. The truth was, she couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. The highway had disappeared into a wall of water, and her hands ached from gripping the steering wheel. They'd been in Dallas visiting Noah's father, Michael Reeves, architect, remarried to a woman named Tanya, who had 2 children of her own and apparently infinite patience for Michael's perpetual lateness and broken promises. The visit had gone about as well as they usually did, which was to say Noah had spent most of it trying to pretend he didn't notice when his father's attention wandered to Tanya's kids. Claire had picked Noah up at 6, planning to beat the storm. She'd failed. Traffic slowed to a crawl, then stopped entirely. Red taillights stretched ahead like a string of dying embers. Claire's phone buzzed in the cup holder. She glanced at it. 3 missed calls from the office, 2 from board chairman Theodore Brennan, 1 from Parker Hale. She ignored them all. The rain intensified, hammering the roof like fists. Noah whimpered in the back seat. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're safe in the car." The words had barely left her mouth when the car lurched sideways. For a moment, Claire thought she'd been hit. Then she felt it, the sickening sensation of the ground disappearing beneath the tires. The Mercedes was floating, lifted by water that had appeared from nowhere, rising faster than physics should allow. Noah screamed. Claire grabbed for her seatbelt, muscle memory from a lifetime of emergency drills that never prepared you for the actual emergency. The car spun slowly, carried by current she couldn't see. She yanked the steering wheel. Nothing happened. They were passengers now, cargo at the mercy of the flood. The car hit something, metal screaming against rock or tree or guardrail. The impact threw Claire against her seatbelt, hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. Water started seeping in around the doors. "Mom!" Noah's voice cut through the shock. Claire twisted in her seat. The back was filling faster than the front. Already the water was up to Noah's waist. Training took over. The emergency hammer was in the glove box where it was supposed to be. Claire grabbed it, smashed the driver's side window on the 3rd try. Glass exploded outward and water rushed in, cold and filthy and terrifying. "Unbuckle, now!" Her voice came out as a command, Marine Sergeant sharp. Noah fumbled with his seatbelt. Claire twisted through the window opening, cutting her arm on broken glass, then reached back for her son. The current was stronger than she'd expected. It grabbed them both the instant they were out of the car, pulling them downstream. Claire wrapped both arms around Noah and kicked toward what she hoped was shore. Her shoes were gone. Her suit jacket dragged like an anchor. Noah coughed up water and grabbed at her neck, choking her. "Swim with me, baby. Don't fight. Just hold on." She had no idea if he heard. The roar of the water drowned everything. They tumbled through darkness, interrupted by lightning flashes that showed trees and road signs and things that might have been other cars. Claire's lungs burned. Her arms were going numb. Noah was dead weight against her chest. Her foot hit something solid, then her knee. They'd reached the shallow part, or what passed for shallow in a flash flood. Claire crawled forward, dragging Noah with her, until they collapsed in mud that sucked at her hands and knees. For a long moment, she could only breathe. In, out, in, out. Noah was coughing beside her, alive. That was what mattered. Everything else was details. When she finally looked up, they were in the middle of nowhere. No road visible, no lights except when lightning strobed across the sky. Just darkness and rain, and her son shaking so hard his teeth chattered. Claire pulled Noah against her chest and stood on legs that barely held her weight. Her phone was gone. Her shoes were gone. The car was gone, swept away downstream with her purse and her laptop and her carefully constructed life. She started walking. There was no plan, no destination, just movement, because staying still meant dying of hypothermia, and Claire Donovan hadn't clawed her way to CEO of Meridian Tech Solutions by accepting defeat. She stumbled through mud and rain with Noah's weight against her side, his arm around her shoulders, both of them soaked and freezing and alive. Lightning showed her a fence, then a tree line, then, impossibly, a light. It was faint, barely visible through the rain, a porch light maybe, or a lamp in a window. Claire aimed for it like a drowning woman reaching for shore. The house materialized out of the darkness in pieces, low and ranch style, white paint barely visible in the storm, a wooden fence around the yard. Normal, suburban, safe. Claire half-carried Noah up 3 porch steps and pounded on the door. No answer. She pounded again, harder. Her fist left muddy streaks on the wood. Through the window beside the door she could see warm light, could make out the edge of furniture, proof of human habitation. Please, the word came out as a sob. Anyone. My son. Still no answer. Lightning cracked so close the thunder was immediate. The porch light flickered. Claire raised her fist to pound again. The door opened. The man standing in the doorway was about her age, maybe a year or 2 older. Dark hair cut military short, gray eyes that widened in recognition, and something else. Something that might have been anger or might have been disbelief. He wore jeans and an old Marine Corps t-shirt, and his jaw was tight with tension. Claire knew that face. She'd spent 15 minutes eviscerating its owner in front of a boardroom full of witnesses 6 hours earlier. Ethan Walker stared at her for exactly 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, Claire saw the calculation happen, saw him recognize her, saw him remember this afternoon, saw him seriously consider closing the door in her face. Then his eyes dropped to Noah, and something shifted. Come in before I change my mind. The words came out flat and hard, no warmth in them. But he stepped aside and Claire stumbled across the threshold, with Noah clutched against her side. The inside of the house was warm and dry and utterly ordinary. Narrow hallway, scuffed hardwood floors, photographs on the walls. Ethan closed the door behind them and engaged the deadbolt with a solid click. Bathroom. Now, both of you. He was already moving down the hallway, all business, no sympathy. Claire followed because she didn't have any other choice. Her legs were shaking. Noah was shaking. Everything was shaking. Ethan threw open a door and flipped on a light. Standard bathroom, white tile, blue towels hanging on the rack. He grabbed the towels and thrust them at Claire. Get those wet clothes off. Hypothermia can kill in 30 minutes. He disappeared before Claire could respond. She heard him moving in another room, opening drawers. Noah was crying silently, tears mixing with rain on his face. It's okay, baby. We're safe. We made it. She peeled Noah's soaked jacket off, then his shirt, rubbing his arms with one of the towels. His skin was cold to the touch, lips tinged with blue. Too cold. Too blue. The door opened a crack. Ethan's hand appeared, holding clothes. "Put these on. I'll leave them here." The door closed again. Claire grabbed the pile. A sweatshirt that would drown her, sweatpants with a drawstring, thick socks. Underneath was a smaller set for Noah. She dressed her son first, then herself, fingers clumsy with cold and shock. The sweatshirt smelled like laundry detergent and something else, something masculine and clean. The sweater underneath was soft blue, worn thin from washing. Claire pulled it on and felt the first edge of warmth. When they emerged from the bathroom, Ethan was waiting in the hallway, holding a silver emergency blanket. Living room. He led them to a small room dominated by a couch and a coffee table covered in what looked like homework.
A child's backpack sat on the floor, crayons scattered across paper. Ethan wrapped the blanket around Noah, then stepped back, maintaining careful distance. "I've got tea coming. You need to warm up from the inside." He disappeared into what must be the kitchen. Claire sank onto the couch with Noah pulled close against her. The blanket crinkled, reflecting heat back at them. Noah was still shaking, but not as violently. His lips were starting to pink up. Footsteps in the hallway, small ones. Claire looked up to see a little girl standing in the doorway, wearing purple pajamas and clutching a stuffed elephant. 7 or 8 years old, dark hair, brown eyes, serious expression. "Daddy, I heard noises." Ethan appeared behind her, crouching down to her level with practiced ease. "We have guests, baby. They got caught in the storm. I need you to be very grown up right now, okay?" The girl looked at Claire and Noah with solemn assessment. "Okay. Is someone hurt?" "Just cold and wet. "They'll be fine." But there was something in his voice, some edge that suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Or maybe it was something else, some history Claire didn't understand. The girl's eyes fixed on Claire, specifically on the blue sweater Claire was wearing. "That's Mama's sweater." The words dropped into the room like stones into still water. Claire looked down at the soft blue fabric, then back up at Ethan. His face had gone carefully neutral, the way it had in the boardroom right before she'd torn his presentation apart. "It is." Ethan's voice was quiet. "And it's okay. Mama would have wanted to help too." The girl processed this with a gravity beyond her years. Then her attention shifted to Claire's face. "You have to be nice to my dad today. He was sad yesterday." "Sophie?" Ethan's voice held warning. But the girl plowed ahead with the fearless honesty of childhood. "Grandpa Frank says you're mean. Are you mean?" Claire opened her mouth, closed it. What could she possibly say? That yes, she'd been mean? That she'd systematically humiliated this man in front of his peers because she needed to prove something to a boardroom full of men who thought a woman couldn't run their company? "I wasn't nice to your dad." The truth felt like glass in her throat. "And I'm sorry about that. You should tell him, not me." The girl's logic was irrefutable. Claire turned to Ethan, who was watching this exchange with an expression she couldn't read. "I'm sorry for yesterday, for how I treated you and your work." Ethan's jaw worked for a moment, then he nodded once, sharp and final. "Apology accepted. Now let's eat before everything gets cold." He straightened and headed back to the kitchen, taking his daughter with him. Claire sat on the couch with Noah bundled against her side and tried to process what had just happened. The man she'd humiliated had opened his door, had given them shelter, had offered his dead wife's clothes without hesitation, had accepted her apology with grace she absolutely did not deserve. The kettle whistled in the kitchen. A moment later, Ethan returned with 2 mugs of tea, steam rising from both. "Careful, it's hot." Claire took the mug with both hands, wrapping her fingers around the ceramic. The warmth spread through her palms. She took a sip. Chamomile and honey, the kind of comfort food you made for children or invalids, the kind of thing that said care without requiring words. Ethan held out the second mug to Noah, who looked at it with uncertain eyes. You like honey? Noah nodded slightly. Good. That's the secret ingredient. Makes anything better. His voice had changed, gone gentle in a way it hadn't been when speaking to Claire. This was how he talked to his daughter. This was the father, not the engineer she'd demolished. Noah took the mug and sipped carefully. Color was coming back to his face, pink instead of blue. Good. That was good.
What's your favorite subject in school?
Noah's voice came out small and uncertain. Science? Yeah? Me too. When I was your age, I used to build these crazy contraptions in my garage. Drove my mom nuts. Ethan settled into an armchair across from the couch, maintaining distance. Professional, polite, but not warm. You build stuff sometimes? Noah glanced at Claire, asking permission with his eyes. She nodded. Robots mostly. Robots are cool. My daughter Sophie, she's more into art. She's sleeping in the other room, but you'll probably meet her in the morning. Is she my age? A little younger, 7, but probably close enough. The conversation was careful, designed to put Noah at ease, and it was working. Noah's shoulders came down from his ears, his grip on the mug relaxed. Claire watched Ethan Walker talk to her son and tried to reconcile this man with the engineer whose proposal she'd shredded 6 hours earlier. Same face, same gray eyes, but everything else was different. Gentle instead of defensive. Patient instead of angry. A father instead of an employee. The shame hit her like a physical blow, not just for this afternoon, though that was bad enough, but for the 3 months before. The demotion she delivered with bureaucratic efficiency, the cuts that had been strategic on paper and cruel in practice. The way she'd systematically proven she could make tough decisions without ever considering the human cost. This man, this father, had opened his door to the woman who'd hurt him, had given them safety when he could have left them to freeze. Claire set down her mug before her shaking hands could spill it. Thank you. The words weren't enough, but they were all she had. For everything. Ethan's eyes met hers for a moment. Something complicated passed between them. Acknowledgement, understanding, the beginning of something that might eventually become peace. You needed help. That was all he said. Like it was that simple. Like mercy was just a reflex instead of a choice. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside Ethan Walker's small house in Brookhaven, Texas, 2 families broken in different ways found temporary shelter from the chaos. And in the space between rescue and resentment, something began to shift. Neither of them knew it yet, but the storm had brought more than just destruction. It had brought a chance to rebuild, if they were brave enough to take it. Morning arrived with the peculiar brightness that follows violent storms, the kind of light that seems scrubbed clean, as if the world has been washed new. Ethan woke to silence, the absence of rain so complete it felt like pressure in his ears. For a moment he lay still, disoriented, trying to remember why his clothes were twisted around him, why he'd slept on top of the covers. Then memory crashed back. Claire, Noah, the storm. He found them in his living room. Claire was awake, perched on the edge of the couch with her hands wrapped around a mug of water, staring at nothing. Noah was still asleep, curled under the emergency blanket with Sophie's spare pillow under his head. The boy's face had lost its blue tinge, breathing even and peaceful. Claire looked up when Ethan's footstep creaked the floorboard. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she'd slept about as well as he had, which was to say, not at all. Morning. Ethan kept his voice low. Coffee? Please. He moved to the kitchen, grateful for the familiar ritual. Measuring grounds, pouring water, the mechanical comfort of routine. Through the window he could see the aftermath. His backyard looked like a war zone. Branches everywhere. The wooden fence listing at a dangerous angle, and beyond it, The creek had swollen to 3 times its normal width, brown water churning past at terrifying speed. The coffee maker gurgled. Ethan pulled down 2 mugs and tried not to think about the woman sitting in his living room wearing his dead wife's sweater. Claire appeared in the doorway, hovering at the threshold like she wasn't sure she was allowed to enter. "I called my insurance. The car's gone. They found it 2 miles downstream. Totaled." Her voice was steady but brittle, professional, the CEO reasserting control. "And Hertz? They said I'm liable for the full value since I drove into a flash flood warning. $28,000. Ethan poured coffee into both mugs, black for him, then paused with the sugar in his hand. "How do you take it?" "2 sugars, no cream." He prepared her coffee and slid it across the counter. Their fingers didn't touch. "What about getting home?" Claire wrapped both hands around the mug. "My phone's gone, my wallet, everything was in my purse." Ethan pulled out his own phone and brought up the weather service. Road closures painted most of Jefferson County red, and 45 was completely blocked. The back roads into Houston were underwater. "You're stuck here until tomorrow at least, maybe longer." Claire's carefully constructed composure cracked just slightly. "I can't impose for another full day." "You don't have a choice." Ethan set his phone down. "The roads are gone. Unless you want to swim back to Houston with Noah, you're staying." She flinched at the mention of swimming. "Fair enough." The memory was too fresh, too raw. Sophie wandered in wearing her purple pajamas, hair sleep-tangled, elephant dragging by one ear. She stopped when she saw Claire, memory clearly catching up. "Oh, you're still here." "The roads are flooded, baby. Miss Donovan and Noah need to stay another day." Sophie processed this with her characteristic seriousness. "Then I should make breakfast. We have pancake mix." Before Ethan could protest, Sophie was dragging her step stool to the counter and pulling out the mixing bowl. She looked at Claire with expectation. "Can you help? You need to measure the milk." Claire set down her coffee and moved to the counter like she was approaching something dangerous. "I haven't made pancakes in years." "It's easy." Sophie handed her the measuring cup with the confidence of a 7-year-old who'd been helping her father cook since she could stand. 2 cups of milk, 1 cup of mix, 1 egg. They worked in awkward tandem, Sophie directing while Claire followed instructions with the intense concentration of someone terrified of failing at something simple. Ethan watched from the doorway, coffee in hand, trying to process the surreal domesticity of his boss making breakfast in his kitchen. The first pancake burned. Sophie giggled. Claire stared at the blackened disc with something approaching horror. "It's okay." Sophie patted her arm with the gravity of a much older person. "Daddy burns them too sometimes. We just throw it away and try again." The second pancake was better. So was the third. By the time Noah emerged, sleepy and disoriented, there was a stack of slightly misshapen but edible pancakes on a plate, and Claire was smiling. Actually smiling, not the professional mask she wore to board meetings, but something genuine and surprised. They ate together at Ethan's small kitchen table. Maple syrup and butter, orange juice from concentrate, the kind of ordinary morning that felt extraordinary given what had happened the night before. Noah and Sophie discovered a shared obsession with Legos, which led to an animated discussion about the merits of different construction techniques that went completely over Ethan's head. "Your mom made these pancakes." Noah looked at Claire with something like awe. "You cooked?" "I'm capable of basic tasks." But Claire's voice held warmth, even amusement. Ethan watched her with Noah and saw a different person. Softer, more human. The CEO stripped away to reveal just a mother relieved her child was alive. After breakfast, Ethan walked the property line. The damage was worse than it looked from the house. The fence had taken a beating, several posts pulled completely out of the ground. The shed roof had lost shingles,
and the creek, normally a lazy trickle, had become a raging river that had carved new channels through what used to be solid ground. Claire found him standing at the edge, staring at the destruction. How bad? Fixable. Expensive, but fixable. She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was careful. I need to explain something. About yesterday's meeting. You don't have to. Yes, I do. She moved to stand beside him, maintaining distance but clearly determined. When I joined Meridian, the board gave me a test. Theodore Brennan specifically. He said, prove you can make tough decisions. Cut 15% of operating costs in Q1. So you cut me. You were the highest paid engineer. 8 years of service.
Cutting you sent a message that I wasn't going to protect the old guard. Ethan turned to face her. So I was a political sacrifice. Yes. Claire met his eyes directly. And I'm not proud of it. But I had to show them I wasn't afraid to make hard choices. You traded my family's security for your credibility. The anger came back, not as hot as yesterday, but still there, still real. That's not tough. That's cowardice. Claire flinched like he'd struck her. You're right. The admission was so unexpected, Ethan almost didn't believe it. CEOs didn't admit fault. They spun, they justified, they blamed market forces or strategic imperatives or anything except their own choices. 8 months ago, I walked into Meridian. 9 men on the board, all over 50. They looked at me like I was there to fill a diversity quota. One of them asked if I knew how to use Excel. So you decided to prove them wrong by being twice as ruthless as they were. Something like that. Claire crossed her arms, defensive posture betraying the professional voice. I thought that's what leadership meant. Being hard, uncompromising, making people fear my standards so they'd respect my authority. How's that working out? I have the highest turnover rate in the company's history. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. 3 senior engineers have quit in 6 months. Morale is in the basement, and Parker Hale is building a case to replace me. Parker wants your job? Has, since the board picked me over him. He's just waiting for me to fail badly enough that they'll hand him the position. Ethan processed this. The office politics he'd been ignoring suddenly snapped into focus. Parker's smile during yesterday's meeting, the way he'd encouraged Claire's criticism, the quiet conversations in hallways that stopped when Ethan walked past. So you humiliated me to prove something to a board that's waiting for you to fail, while your VP actively works to undermine you. When you put it that way, it sounds stupid. Because it is stupid. Claire turned to look at him, really look at him, and for the first time since they'd met, Ethan saw past the armor to the person underneath. Young, uncertain, terrified of failing in a way that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with proving she deserved to exist in spaces that didn't want her. I'm sorry. The words came out raw. For the demotion, for yesterday, for treating you like a problem instead of a person. I'm sorry. Apology accepted, but it doesn't change the math. $66,000 a year doesn't cover my expenses. I'm still paying off my wife's medical bills. Another hit like that, and I'll have to pull Sophie from her activities. How much do you still owe? $47,000. Claire was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. What if I fixed it? Ethan's laugh was bitter. You going to write me a check? No, but I could reinstate you, restore your salary. Back pay for the 3 months. Why would you do that? Because it's the right thing to do. And because her voice dropped, you opened your door last night when you had every reason to leave us in the storm. That's not how this works. You can't just promote me because you feel guilty. The board will see right through it. Then I'll make sure the board understands your value. Your proposal yesterday wasn't bad, Ethan.
It was actually good. I picked it apart because I needed to prove I could, not because it deserved that treatment. So you'll what? Tell them you changed your mind? I'll tell them I was wrong. That cutting you was a mistake based on political pressure instead of merit. That Meridian needs senior engineers who understand our clients and our market. They'll think you're sleeping with me. Claire's expression went sharp. Let them think what they want. I know the truth. You know the truth. That's what matters. Ethan wanted to believe her,
Wanted to think that justice existed, that merit mattered, that doing the right thing when it was hard actually counted for something. But he'd been burned too many times, had watched too many promises evaporate under pressure. I'll think about it. Fair enough. They stood in silence, watching the creek rage past. Somewhere downstream was Claire's rental car, swept away like everything else the storm had taken. But here they were, still standing, still breathing, finding their way towards something that might eventually become understanding. The rest of Saturday passed in strange domesticity. Sophie and Noah built an elaborate Lego castle in the living room, collaborating with the easy friendship of children who didn't carry adult baggage. Claire helped Ethan cook lunch, following his instructions to make grilled cheese sandwiches that only burned slightly. They ate on the couch while the kids explained their architectural vision with intense seriousness.
By evening, the floodwaters had started to recede. Not enough to drive through, but enough to suggest tomorrow might bring freedom. Ethan gave Claire and Noah his bedroom, taking the couch for himself despite her protests. Falling asleep to the sound of children's laughter in the next room felt both alien and achingly familiar, like glimpsing a life he might have had if Emma hadn't gotten sick. Sunday morning, Claire's phone was delivered by a deputy sheriff who'd found it in a tree half a mile away. Waterlogged and dead, but the SIM card was intact. Ethan drove her to the AT&T store in town, where she bought a replacement, watching her transform back into the CEO with every mile closer to civilization. The armor going back on, the walls rebuilding themselves. Tuesday morning at Meridian Tech Solutions, Ethan's inbox contained a single email from Claire Donovan. Subject: personnel change, effective immediately. He opened it with his stomach in knots. The email was professional.
Four announced his reinstatement to senior engineer, effective immediately, salary restored to $95,000, back pay for 3 months to be included in Friday's paycheck. He would report directly to Claire for weekly project reviews, the reporting structure to be evaluated after 90 days. No mention of the storm, no reference to Saturday night, just clean corporate language that could have been drafted by HR but had Claire's fingerprints all over it. Ethan read it 3 times before he believed it was real. The office reaction was immediate and poisonous. Sarah Martinez cornered him at the coffee station within an hour. How did you do it? Do what? Get promoted 3 months after being demoted. She kept her voice low, but her eyes were sharp. People are talking. Let them talk. They're saying you're sleeping with her. The accusation hit harder than it should have. Ethan set down his coffee with deliberate care. I helped Claire and her son during the storm. They needed shelter. I provided it. That's all. And she just happened to promote you right after? She realized the demotion was a mistake. My work speaks for itself. Sarah's expression said she didn't believe him, but was too professional to push harder. Just be careful, okay? Office relationships are complicated, even without the power dynamic. There is no relationship. But the words felt hollow even as he said them. Because something had shifted that weekend. Some understanding reached across the kitchen table making pancakes. Some recognition of shared humanity in the face of crisis. Not romance, not yet, but the foundation for something that could become dangerous if they weren't careful. Mark Thompson was less subtle. He stopped by Ethan's desk that afternoon with a smirk that needed punching. Heard congratulations are in order. Thanks. Must be nice having connections. It's nice being good at my job. Sure. Mark's smirk widened.
Whatever you need to tell yourself. Ethan let it slide because engaging would only feed the gossip. But the resentment burned. 3 months of proving his worth meant nothing compared to the optics of a promotion that came suspiciously fast after a weekend with the boss. The first project review was scheduled for Friday at 4. Ethan showed up with his laptop and 3 folders of documentation, prepared to justify every line of his proposal. Claire's office was exactly what he'd expected. Minimalist, expensive, with a view of downtown Houston that probably cost more per square foot than his entire house. She was on the phone when he arrived, gesturing for him to sit while she finished what sounded like a tense conversation with a vendor. Watching her work was instructive. She was sharp, direct, taking no prisoners but also no cheap shots. When she wanted something, she made her case with logic and data. When she had to say no, she did it cleanly, without apology or excuse. The call ended. Claire set down her phone and turned her full attention to Ethan. "Thank you for coming. You summoned me. I came." A flicker of something crossed her face. Amusement, maybe, or recognition that the power dynamic was weird and getting weirder. "I wanted to explain the reporting structure. You'll meet with me every Friday for 30 minutes. We'll review your project progress, discuss any roadblocks, plan next steps. After 90 days, you'll transition to reporting through Sarah Martinez." "Why the change?" "To establish that your promotion is merit-based. If the board questions it, I need to show that I'm actively monitoring your performance." "So I'm on probation." "You're being given a chance to prove yourself. Again." The distinction mattered to her. Ethan could see it in the way she held herself, the careful precision of her words. She was trying to do the right thing while navigating a minefield of corporate politics and personal history.
"What about the gossip? Sarah already asked if we're sleeping together." Claire's expression went very still. "Are you asking what our story is? Or are you asking what the truth is?" "Both. The truth is, I owe you for saving my son's life. The story is, I corrected a strategic error in workforce allocation." "And when people don't believe that? Then they don't believe it. I can't control what people think, Ethan. I can only control what I do." She was right, of course, but knowing she was right didn't make the situation less uncomfortable. They spent the next 20 minutes reviewing his projects. Claire's questions were sharp but fair, pushing him to think deeper about his assumptions without belittling his work. It felt like a conversation between equals instead of a performance review, and by the time Ethan left her office, he was almost convinced this could work. Almost. The following Thursday, Sophie called during Ethan's lunch break. The school's number on the caller ID sent his heart rate spiking.
"Mr. Walker, this is Principal Davidson. Sophie's fine, but there's been an incident."
"What kind of incident?" "Another student made inappropriate comments about her mother." Sophie became upset and pushed him. Ethan's hands tightened on his phone. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. He made it in 8. Sophie was sitting outside the principal's office, face blotchy with tears, clutching her elephant like it was the only solid thing in a dissolving world. Ethan dropped to his knees in front of her. "Baby girl, what happened?"
"Tommy said Mama left because she didn't love us enough."
Sophie's voice broke.
"He said she chose to die instead of being my mom."
White-hot rage flooded through Ethan, the kind that made vision narrow and hands shake. But he pulled Sophie into his arms first, holding her while she cried against his shoulder. Principal Davidson explained the situation with professional sympathy. Tommy Rodriguez had been taunting Sophie during recess. She'd told him to stop. He'd continued. She'd pushed him hard enough that he fell and scraped his knee. "I understand Sophie was provoked." Davidson's voice was kind but firm. "And Tommy will face consequences for his words. But we have a zero-tolerance policy for physical contact." "What kind of consequences are we talking about?" "1 day in-school suspension for Sophie. Same for Tommy, plus a written apology." Tommy's mother, Mrs. Rodriguez, sat across the room with her son.
She looked at Ethan with something between sympathy and impatience. Boys will be boys, Mr. Walker. I'm sure Sophie didn't mean to overreact. Overreact. The word detonated in Ethan's chest. My wife died of cancer 3 years ago. Your son used that as a weapon against my 7-year-old daughter. He stood slowly, keeping his voice level through sheer force of will. Cancer isn't a joke. Grief isn't a punchline.
And if you think my daughter overreacted to being told her dead mother chose to abandon her, we have very different definitions of appropriate behavior. Mrs. Rodriguez's face flushed. I didn't mean... What's your policy for emotional abuse, Principal Davidson? Davidson met his eyes steadily. We take all forms of bullying seriously, Mr. Walker. Tommy's suspension includes mandatory counseling sessions. Good. Sophie served her suspension Friday. Ethan kept her home, called in sick himself, and spent the day letting her process. They made hot chocolate with the recipe Emma used to make, extra marshmallows and whipped cream. They looked through photo albums. They talked about Emma in a way they hadn't in months, bringing her memory into the light instead of keeping it locked away where it hurt less, but also meant less. That afternoon, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Claire. Sarah told me about Sophie. Is she okay? The fact that Claire had heard, had cared enough to ask, shifted something in Ethan's chest. She will be. Thanks for asking. Noah's been asking about her. Says she's the bravest girl he knows. Ethan smiled despite everything. Tell him she says hi. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Then, if you need anything, let me know. I mean that. The offer was simple, sincere, and it cracked open a door Ethan had been holding closed since Emma died. The door that led to trusting people, to accepting help, to believing that someone might genuinely care about his daughter's well-being without ulterior motive. He didn't respond, wasn't sure what to say, but he saved the number in his contacts under Claire Donovan and tried not to think too hard about what that meant. The following Thursday evening, Claire's son called Ethan's cell phone. The number was Claire's, but the voice was Noah's, young and panicked. Mr. Walker? It's Noah. I can't reach Mom, and I'm supposed to be at Dad's, but he's not here, and I don't know what to do. Ethan was halfway to his truck before Noah finished explaining. The boy was standing in the lobby of his father's building in downtown Dallas, 40 miles away, while Michael Reeves was apparently at dinner with his girlfriend and her children. The doorman wouldn't let Noah upstairs without parental permission. Michael wasn't answering his phone. Claire was in meetings with her phone off. Stay with the doorman. Don't go anywhere. I'm coming. Ethan called his neighbor, Mrs. Williams, to watch Sophie, then broke every speed limit between Brookhaven and Dallas. His mind was racing faster than the truck. A 9-year-old abandoned in a lobby because his father couldn't be bothered to text that he'd be late. A mother working so hard to prove herself that she missed 8 phone calls from her son. A system so broken that a kid's best option was to call his mother's employee instead of any of the adults actually responsible for him. Noah was exactly where he'd said he'd be, sitting in a leather chair that made him look even smaller, clutching his backpack with white knuckles. When he saw Ethan, his whole face crumpled with relief. I'm sorry. I didn't know who else to call. You did exactly right. Ethan put a hand on Noah's shoulder. You can always call me. Always. They went to a diner, the kind with red vinyl booths and waitresses who called everyone honey. Ethan ordered burgers and fries and let Noah talk. About his father's new girlfriend, Tanya, and her kids, Emma and Josh. About how Dad's apartment felt more like their home than his. About the robotics competition Michael had promised to attend and then forgotten about. Does your dad forget a lot? Noah dragged a fry through ketchup. Sometimes. He's busy with Tanya's family. You're his family too.
I know, but Noah's voice was small, carrying understanding no 9-year-old should have to possess. I think he has the family he really wanted now. Tanya's kids are easier than me. The casual devastation of it hit Ethan like a fist. This boy, smart and kind and desperately trying to be understanding about his own father's negligence, making excuses, minimizing his own worth, accepting abandonment as something he'd somehow earned. Listen to me. Ethan waited until Noah met his eyes. You are not a burden. You are not too difficult. You are exactly who you're supposed to be. If your father doesn't make time for you, that's his failure, not yours. Do you understand? Noah nodded, but tears were sliding down his face. Can I count on you, Mr. Walker? The question was too big, too heavy with implications Ethan couldn't fully process. But the answer was simple. Yeah, buddy. You can count on me. They were back in Brookhaven by 9. Claire's car was already in Ethan's driveway when he pulled up, and she was out of the driver's seat before he'd killed the engine. Still in her work clothes, hair coming loose from its bun, mascara smudged like she'd been crying. She pulled Noah into a hug that looked like it hurt, fierce and desperate and full of relief.
Oh, thank God. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry.
It's okay, Mom. Mr. Walker took care of me. Claire looked at Ethan over Noah's head, and the gratitude in her eyes was so raw it was hard to look at directly.
Thank you.
The words came out choked.
For everything.
He's a good kid. I know. Claire pulled back enough to look at Noah's face. Your father called. He said there was an emergency at work. There wasn't. Ethan kept his voice level. His Instagram story from tonight shows him at Chuck E. Cheese with Tanya and her children. Claire's expression went from grateful to furious in half a second. That son of a... She caught herself, remembering Noah was listening. Her jaw clenched hard enough Ethan could see the muscle jump. We'll talk about this later. Right now, let's get you home and into bed. Noah looked between them, then at the house where light showed in the windows. Can I say hi to Sophie first? 5 minutes. Noah ran inside. Claire stayed on the driveway, arms wrapped around herself despite the warm evening. How long has this been going on? Ethan asked quietly. Michael forgetting? 6 months. Since he moved in with Tanya. Before that, he was more reliable. You should talk to him. I have, endlessly. He says I'm being oversensitive, that Noah's fine, that I'm projecting my own issues. Classic gaslighting. Claire laughed, but there was no humor in it. I keep thinking I should just let it go, pick my battles. But tonight, when I got those missed calls and realized I'd left my son stranded while I was trying to prove something in a meeting that didn't even matter... Her voice broke. Ethan stepped closer, not touching but present. You're trying to do everything. That's not sustainable. I don't know how to do anything else. When I'm at work, I feel guilty about Noah. When I'm with Noah, I'm thinking about the projects I'm neglecting. I can't win. So stop trying to win. Start trying to be present. That's easy for you to say. You don't have a board of directors questioning your every decision because you're a woman. No, but I have a 7-year-old questioning whether her dead mother loved her enough to stay alive. We all have impossible situations, Claire. We just do our best. And what if our best isn't good enough? Then we adjust. We ask for help. We stop pretending we have to be perfect. Noah emerged from the house, Sophie beside him, both of them looking proud of some shared accomplishment only children understood. Claire watched her son with an expression Ethan recognized. Love mixed with fear, mixed with the terrible awareness of how fragile everything was. She drove away 10 minutes later. Ethan stood in his driveway watching the taillights disappear, and tried to ignore the fact that his chest felt tight in ways that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with caring about people he had no business caring about. Sophie appeared at his elbow.
Miss Donovan seems sad.
She is, baby. Are you going to help her?
I don't know if I can.
Sophie considered this with her characteristic seriousness.
Mama used to say we help people who need help, even when it's hard.
Your mama was right.
So you should help her, because that's what we do.
Out of the mouths of babes. Ethan pulled Sophie close and wondered when exactly he'd lost control of this situation. When he'd opened the door Saturday night? When he'd driven to Dallas to rescue Noah? Or maybe it had happened earlier, in that boardroom, when he'd looked at Claire Donovan and seen an adversary instead of a person struggling in her own way. Whatever the moment, there was no going back now.
Their lives were tangled together in ways that felt inevitable and terrifying, and somehow right. The following Monday, Sarah cornered Ethan again. People are talking. They're always talking. No, I mean really talking. Someone saw Claire's car at your house Thursday night. Mark's telling everyone you're having an affair. We're not.
I believe you.
Sarah's voice was quiet.
But perception matters, Ethan. And right now the perception is that the CEO is playing favorites with an employee she's sleeping with.
Then the perception is wrong.
Maybe. But you should be careful. Parker's building a case.
A case for what?
For removing Claire. He thinks she's letting personal feelings compromise professional judgment.
Based on promoting me?
Based on promoting you right after spending a weekend at your house. He's got photos, Ethan. Someone's been following her.
The implications detonated through Ethan's nervous system. Photos. Following. This wasn't office gossip anymore. This was a coordinated attack. Who's taking photos? I don't know. But Parker's scheduled an emergency board meeting for Friday. You and Claire are both summoned. Ethan felt the trap closing. Claire had tried to do the right thing, to correct an injustice, and now she was being crucified for it. And he was the weapon being used against her. Friday arrived like an execution date. Ethan walked into the boardroom at 8 a.m. and found 12 familiar faces arranged in judgment. Theodore Brennan presided from the head of the table, 62 years old and chairman of the board, expression unreadable. Claire sat alone on one side. Parker Hale sat on the other, looking like a man who'd already won. The meeting began with Parker's presentation. Professional, devastating. He had photos of Claire's car at Ethan's house 5 different nights over 3 weeks. He had timestamps. He had testimony from employees about the time Claire and Ethan spent together. He had documentation of the salary increase and promotion. The narrative was clear and damning. CEO shows favoritism to employees she's involved with. Quid pro quo wrapped in corporate restructuring. Ethics violation at minimum, possibly grounds for removal. Claire sat through it with her spine straight and her face carefully neutral. But Ethan saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the arms of her chair. When Parker finished, Theodore turned to Ethan. Mr. Walker, are you in a romantic relationship with Miss Donovan? The question landed like a grenade. Answer yes and confirm everything Parker claimed. Answer no and commit perjury, or near enough to matter in this room. Ethan met Theodore's eyes directly. No, sir. We are friends. Our children are friends. But there is no romantic relationship. But you spend significant time together outside of work. Our children have playdates. We coordinate schedules. Is that inappropriate? Theodore's expression didn't change. That depends, Mr. Walker. Are you attracted to Miss Donovan? The trap was elegant. Deny it and lie. Admit it and validate Parker's case. With respect, Chairman Brennan, my personal feelings are irrelevant. What matters is whether I've acted on them in a way that compromises professional integrity. I haven't. Miss Donovan reinstated me because my work merited it. You want proof? Audit my projects,
review my performance metrics, talk to my colleagues. But don't ask me to testify about feelings that have no bearing on my professional conduct." The room was silent. Theodore leaned back in his chair. "That's quite a speech, Mr. Walker." "It's the truth, sir. Even if your feelings for Mrs. Donovan are genuine, they may compromise your judgment about whether her decision was legitimate. My feelings don't compromise my judgment. They motivate me to work harder, to prove that her faith in me wasn't misplaced."
Ethan's voice was steady.
"Sir, I'm a single father raising a daughter on my own. I can't afford to screw up my career for a relationship that doesn't exist. Everything I do is calculated to provide stability for my child." Theodore studied him for a long moment. Then he turned to Claire. "Ms. Donovan, do you have anything to add?" Claire stood, and when she spoke, her voice was steel. "Chairman Brennan, members of the board, I made a mistake 3 months ago when I demoted Ethan Walker. I did it under pressure from this board to prove I could make tough decisions. I chose political expediency over merit, and it was wrong. Reinstating him was about correcting that error. Nothing more." "But you can't deny the optics." Parker's voice was smooth. "Your car at his house, the time spent together, the promotion that came immediately after a weekend alone with him. My son was stranded by his father. Ethan Walker drove 40 miles to pick him up."
Should I have refused his help because it might look inappropriate? That's not the point. Then what is the point, Mr. Hale? That I should have let my 9-year-old son sit in a lobby alone because accepting help from a colleague might create gossip? Parker's smile was thin. The point is that your judgment appears compromised. By what? Gratitude? Basic human decency? By whatever feelings you have for Mr. Walker. Claire's expression went cold. I have respect for Mr. Walker's professional abilities. I have gratitude for his help with my son, and I have zero tolerance for conspiracy theories dressed up as corporate oversight. The room erupted in crosstalk. Theodore banged his hand on the table for silence. Enough. This board will deliberate in private. Ms. Donovan, Mr. Walker, you're dismissed. They walked out together, not speaking until they reached the elevator. The doors closed, and they were alone. "I'm sorry." Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. "I tried to do the right thing, and I've made everything worse." "You did do the right thing. The board just can't handle a CEO who admits mistakes. They're going to fire me." "You don't know that." "I know Parker. He's wanted this job since day one. Now he's got the ammunition to take it. Then we fight back." "How?" "By proving him wrong. By showing them that merit matters more than optics." The elevator opened. They stepped into the parking garage, footsteps echoing. "Ethan." He turned. Claire was standing under a fluorescent light that washed out her color and made her look exhausted. "Thank you for not throwing me under the bus." "We're in this together." "Are we?" Because her voice caught. "I'm not sure I deserve to have anyone in this with me." "You made a mistake. You're fixing it. That's more than most people do." He walked to his truck before he could say anything else, before he could acknowledge that somewhere in the past 3 weeks, protecting Claire Donovan had become as important as protecting himself. The call came at 6 a.m. Monday morning, 3 days after the board meeting. Ethan was already awake, had been for an hour, staring at his ceiling and running through worst-case scenarios. When his phone lit up with Theodore Brennan's number, his stomach dropped. "Mr. Walker, I apologize for the early hour." "It's fine, sir. The board has reached a decision. We'd like you and Ms. Donovan to come to the office at 8. "Can you tell me what the decision is?" "Monday morning, Mr. Walker. Enjoy what's left of your weekend." The line went dead. Ethan lay there holding his phone and trying to breathe normally. 2 more hours before he'd know if he still had a job. 2 more hours before Claire learned if she'd survived Parker's coup attempt. He called her at 6:30. She answered on the first ring, voice already wide awake. "You got the call too?" "Yes."
Her breathing was audible over the line. Ethan, I'm scared. Me too. If they fire me, you'll be collateral damage. Parker will make sure of it. Then we go down fighting. There was a long pause. When Claire spoke again, her voice was steadier. I don't want to lose you. The words hung between them, heavy with meanings neither was ready to unpack. Ethan gripped his phone tighter. You won't. Whatever happens, we face it together. Together. She repeated the word like testing its weight. Okay. I'll see you at 8. Sophie wandered into the kitchen while Ethan was making coffee, rubbing sleep from her eyes. You're up early, Daddy. Couldn't sleep. Are you worried about work? The kid saw too much. Ethan pulled her into a hug. A little bit, but it'll be okay. Is Miss Donovan in trouble? Maybe. We both might be. Sophie processed this with her 7-year-old logic. If you both get fired, can Noah and I still be friends? The simplicity of it made Ethan's chest tight. Of course, baby, nothing changes that. Good, because he's my best friend. Ethan dropped Sophie at school at 7:30 and drove to Meridian with his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The parking garage was mostly empty, just a few early birds and the security vehicles. Claire's car was already there, parked in her reserved spot like a challenge. He found her in the lobby, pacing, still in her work armor, navy suit and heels, but her hair was down and her face was pale. When she saw him, she stopped moving. Ready? As I'll ever be. They rode the elevator in silence, walked down the hallway side by side, not touching, but close enough that he could feel her tension like static electricity. The boardroom door was closed. They waited outside like defendants before sentencing. At exactly 8 a.m., the door opened. Theodore Brennan stood there, expression unreadable. Come in. The 12 board members were arranged around the table. Parker Hale sat at the far end, posture confident. But there was something in Theodore's face that gave Ethan hope. Not warmth, exactly, but not condemnation either. Ms. Donovan, Mr. Walker, please sit. They sat in the middle of the table, the arrangement placing them physically separate from both ends. Neutral ground or no man's land, depending on how this went. Theodore opened a folder, scanning the contents with deliberate slowness. This board has spent considerable time reviewing Mr. Hale's allegations regarding the professional relationship between Mrs. Donovan and Mr. Walker. We've examined performance metrics, interviewed colleagues, and reviewed all available evidence. Ethan felt Claire's hand find his under the table. Her fingers were ice cold. He squeezed back. Mr. Hale's concerns about the appearance of impropriety were not unfounded. Theodore's voice was measured. In any organization, the relationship between a CEO and a direct report is subject to scrutiny, particularly when that relationship extends beyond professional boundaries. Here it came. The firing. The justification. The end of everything. However, Theodore looked up from his folder. We found no evidence of actual impropriety. Mr. Walker's performance reviews consistently show excellence in his work. His promotion was justified by merit, not favoritism. And while Ms. Donovan's personal feelings for Mr. Walker may have influenced the timing of that promotion, they did not influence the decision itself. Wait, what? Furthermore, Theodore's gaze shifted to Parker. We found Mr. Hale's methods of gathering evidence, including hiring a private investigator to photograph Miss Donovan and Mr. Walker, to be deeply problematic and a violation of company ethics policies. Parker's confident posture cracked. I was protecting the company's interests. You were engaging in harassment. Theodore's voice went cold. The board has decided that your position as VP of Operations is no longer tenable. You're terminated, effective immediately. The room erupted. Parker shot to his feet, face flushed,
You can't be serious. I exposed a scandal. You manufactured a scandal. One of the female board members, Patricia Williams, cut in. There's a significant difference between identifying legitimate concerns and engaging in a vendetta motivated by professional jealousy. This is insane. I'll sue. You're welcome to try. Theodore gestured to security, who'd appeared at the door. Your personal items will be shipped to you. Parker looked at Claire with pure hatred. This isn't over. I believe it is. Claire's voice was steady. Goodbye, Parker. He stormed out, security trailing. The door closed behind him, and the room exhaled collectively. Theodore turned back to Claire and Ethan. That said, we do have concerns about the optics of your relationship. Understandable.
We're requiring full disclosure. You'll both sign acknowledgement forms stating that any personal relationship is consensual and separate from professional decisions. HR will monitor the situation to ensure no preferential treatment occurs. And Mr. Walker? Theodore looked at Ethan directly. You'll be moved to report to Sarah Martinez instead of Mrs. Donovan, removing the direct reporting relationship. That's all? Ethan couldn't quite believe it. We're not fired? Why would we fire two of our best employees? Patricia smiled slightly. Ms. Donovan, your leadership has improved our bottom line by 15% in less than a year. Mr. Walker, your projects consistently come in under budget and ahead of schedule. We'd be idiots to fire you over a personal relationship that hasn't impacted your work. However, Theodore's voice sharpened. We do expect you to maintain professional boundaries at work. Save the personal interactions for off hours. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Claire and Ethan spoke simultaneously. Theodore nodded. Good. Then this matter is closed. Ms. Donovan, your position is secure. Mr. Walker, congratulations on surviving the most dramatic performance review in company history. There was scattered laughter around the table. The tension broke like glass shattering. Ethan and Claire stood, still holding hands under the table where no one could see. They walked out together, made it to the elevator. The doors closed, and Claire turned to him with something between laughter and tears. We're not fired. We're not fired. Parker's fired. Parker's fired. They stared at each other for 3 seconds. Then Claire kissed him. It was fierce and grateful and desperate, nothing gentle about it. Ethan kissed back before his brain caught up, arms coming around her waist, pulling her close. She tasted like coffee and relief, and 3 weeks of tension finally breaking. The elevator dinged. They jerked apart. The doors opened on the 3rd floor. An accountant Ethan vaguely recognized got on, nodded politely, faced forward. Claire and Ethan stood on opposite sides of the elevator, not looking at each other, while adrenaline sang through Ethan's bloodstream. The accountant got off on the 5th floor. The instant the doors closed, Claire grabbed Ethan's tie and pulled him back in. This is a terrible idea. Her words came out breathless against his mouth. The worst. We worked together. We're already under scrutiny. I know. But neither of them stopped. They kissed until the elevator reached the parking garage, stumbled out, still tangled together, made it to Claire's car before reality reasserted itself. Ethan pulled back, breathing hard. We can't do this here. I know. Claire's hands were still fisted in his shirt. But I don't know how to stop. Then don't. Come to my house tonight, after the kids are asleep. We'll figure this out. What if it's a mistake? Then we'll make it together. Claire laughed, shaky but real. When did you become the brave one? About 30 seconds after I opened my door to you in the storm. He kissed her once more, soft this time, then forced himself to step back. Tonight, 8 o'clock. Tonight. The day crawled by. Ethan couldn't focus, couldn't think about anything except the weight of Claire's body against his, the taste of her mouth, the way she'd grabbed him like he was oxygen and she was drowning. Around him, the office buzzed with news of Parker's termination. People came by to congratulate Ethan on surviving. He smiled and nodded and counted down the hours. At 7:30, he called Mrs. Williams to watch Sophie. "I have to go out for a bit. Work thing." Mrs. Williams didn't question it. She showed up at 7:45 with her knitting bag and a knowing smile that made Ethan wonder how transparent he was. Sophie hugged him at the door. "Be careful, Daddy." "Always, baby girl." "I like Miss Donovan." Sophie's voice was matter-of-fact.
Noah says she's been happier since she met you. The kid was going to kill him with her observations. Ethan kissed her forehead and escaped before she could say anything else damning. Claire arrived at 8:03. She'd changed from her work suit into jeans and a sweater, hair loose around her shoulders, makeup washed off. She looked younger, vulnerable, real in a way the CEO armor never allowed. They stood on his porch for a long moment, neither quite sure how to start this. "Come in before I change my mind." Ethan's voice was wry with the callback. Claire smiled. "That phrase has gotten us into trouble before. And here we are again. Here we are." Inside, the house was quiet. They sat on the couch with careful distance between them. Ethan poured bourbon for both of them and tried to figure out how to navigate this. "So," Claire took a sip of bourbon, grimaced at the burn. "We kissed." "We did." "That probably falls under personal relationship territory the board was concerned about." Definitely this complicated. And we work together. Which makes her glass and turned to face him fully.
"I don't want to stop. I know every logical reason we should. The power dynamic, the office politics, the fact that we barely know each other. But I don't want to stop." Ethan traced the rim of his glass. "I haven't felt this way since Emma died. Haven't let myself feel this way. And you scare the hell out of me. Because I'm your boss? Because you matter. Because Sophie likes you, and Noah likes me, and our kids are already building a friendship that'll hurt them if we screw this up. Because every time I look at you, I see 1,000 ways this could go wrong, and I still can't make myself walk away." Claire's breath caught. "So what do? We take it slow. We keep it private until we're sure. We protect the kids first, always. And we promise to be honest, even when it's hard." "I can do that." Claire moved closer, her hand finding his.
"Can you?" "I can try. That's all I'm asking." She kissed him again, slower this time, exploratory instead of desperate. Ethan's hand came up to cup her face, thumb stroking her cheekbone. They took their time, learning the contours of this new thing between them. When they finally broke apart, Claire's eyes were bright. "I should go. Noah's with a sitter, and I promised to be home by 10. "Okay." But neither of them moved. They sat with foreheads touching, breathing the same air, savoring the moment. "Ethan," Claire's voice was quiet. "Thank you for opening your door. For not turning me away when you had every reason to. You needed help. I needed more than help. I needed someone to show me what actually matters. You saved my life, Ethan. Not just from the storm, from the person I was becoming. You saved mine, too. From grief that was eating me alive. From thinking I'd never feel anything again." They kissed once more, gentle and full of promise. Then Claire left, and Ethan sat alone on his couch, trying to process the fact that his life had just changed irrevocably. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments. Quick conversations in the parking garage, texts sent late at night when the kids were asleep, one dinner at a restaurant 40 miles from Brookhaven where they wouldn't run into anyone from work. It was cautious and careful, and nothing like the relationship Ethan had with Emma, but it felt right in a way he couldn't articulate. Sophie and Noah's friendship deepened in parallel. They had playdates every weekend, building increasingly elaborate Lego structures and teaching each other their respective obsessions.
Ethan and Claire would sit in the living room or on the back porch, talking while the children played, building their own foundation alongside the children's. Then Michael filed for custody modification. The paperwork arrived at Claire's office on a Tuesday. She called Ethan from her car, voice shaking.
He's suing for primary custody. 75% instead of 50. On what grounds? That I prioritize my relationship with you over Noah's welfare? That Noah spends too much time at your house, creating an unstable environment? That my work schedule is incompatible with proper parenting? Ethan's hands clenched. He can't win that. He might. Her voice cracked. And the worst part is, he doesn't even want more time with Noah. His lawyer told my lawyer the real goal is reducing child support. How much does he pay now? $2,500 a month? If he gets primary custody, it drops to $500. So he's weaponizing his son to save $2,000 a month? $24,000 a year. Claire's laugh was bitter. Michael's engaged to Tanya. He wants to save money for their new life together. We'll fight this. How? He's not wrong about Noah being at your house. And if the court thinks I'm neglecting my son for a boyfriend, then we prove you're not. We show them Noah's thriving, that our relationship is healthy and stable, that you're a good mother. Ethan. Claire's voice broke. What if I lose him? You won't. We won't let that happen. He drove to her house that night. Noah was asleep, unaware of the battle being waged over his future. Claire was in her kitchen with a bottle of wine half gone, legal documents spread across the counter. My lawyer says I need character witnesses, people who can testify about my parenting. I'll testify. You're the problem, according to Michael. You're the evidence. I'm distracted. Then we get other witnesses, teachers, neighbors, Frank. Will that be enough? It has to be. Ethan pulled her into his arms and let her cry against his shoulder. This was what love looked like at 34. Not the wild passion of youth, but the steady commitment to show up when things got hard, to stand beside someone facing their worst fear and refuse to let them face it alone. The custody hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. They spent those weeks building their case. Claire's lawyer, Amanda Foster, was thorough and relentless. She interviewed Noah's teachers, who testified to his excellent grades and emotional stability. She gathered documentation of Michael's missed visitations, forgotten promises, Instagram posts showing him at family events that didn't include his son. And she prepared Ethan, Claire, and the children to testify. Sophie didn't understand why she had to talk to a judge. Ethan tried to explain without scaring her. Noah's dad wants Noah to live with him more. We need to tell the judge why Noah should stay with his mom. But Noah likes being with us. I know, baby. That's what you'll tell the judge. Will the judge listen? I hope so. The night before the hearing, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking about a 9-year-old boy whose father saw him as a financial burden, about a 7-year-old girl who'd already lost one parent and was terrified of losing her best friend, about a woman who'd clawed her way to CEO only to have her ex-husband use her success as a weapon. His phone buzzed at 2 a.m., a text from Claire. Are you awake? Yeah. Can't stop thinking about tomorrow. Me either. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Then, I'm scared, Ethan. Me too. But we're in this together. Together. The word had become their anchor, the promise that whatever came, they'd face it side by side. The courthouse was older than Ethan expected, built in the 50s with that institutional architecture that aged badly. Judge Margaret Rivera presided, 58 years old, with still gray hair and an expression that gave nothing away. She'd seen everything family court had to offer and couldn't be charmed or intimidated. Michael's lawyer, Richard Stone,
was exactly the kind of attorney money could buy.
Expensive suit, practiced smile, ruthlessness wrapped in civility. He opened with a simple narrative. Devoted father, concerned about his son's welfare, trying to protect the boy from his mother's questionable choices. Ms. Donovan has introduced Noah to a new romantic partner after years of being single. The boy is confused, spending significant time at Mr. Walker's residence. We believe this instability is harmful. Claire's lawyer countered with documentation. Michael's Instagram showing family dinners that excluded Noah, missed visitations, the text message sent to Noah the night he was stranded. Emergency at work, can your mom pick you up instead? Amanda Foster was surgical in her precision. Mr. Reeves claims concern for his son's welfare. Yet when Noah was abandoned in a building lobby, who did the child call? Not his father. Mr. Ethan Walker, his mother's partner, who drove 40 miles to ensure the boy's safety. Richard Stone tried to spin it. Exactly our point. The child is confused about appropriate parental figures. Or the child knows who shows up when he needs help. The testimony began. Michael took the stand first, polished and prepared. He spoke about loving Noah, about concerns regarding Claire's work schedule and new relationship. He was smooth, convincing, playing the part of the worried father perfectly. Then Amanda cross-examined. Mr. Reeves, can you name Noah's robotics team? Michael hesitated. I don't recall the specific name. Tech Titans. He's been on that team for 2 years. How many competitions have you attended? I've been busy with work. 0. Amanda's voice was crisp. You've attended 0 competitions, but you found time to attend 3 of Tanya's daughter's ballet recitals in the past 6 months. Michael's composure cracked slightly. I'm building a relationship with Emma and Josh. At the expense of the son you claim to want more time with? That's not fair. Let's talk about October 12th, Noah's 9th birthday. Where were you? I had a prior commitment. Amanda produced a photo. Your Instagram story from that evening. Chuck E. Cheese with Tanya, Emma, and Josh. No Noah. I was celebrating Emma's achievement. She made honor roll. So you missed your own son's birthday to celebrate your girlfriend's daughter's honor roll. The damage was done. Michael tried to recover, but Amanda had exposed the truth. This wasn't about protecting Noah. This was about reducing financial obligation. Claire testified next. Poised, prepared, honest about the challenges of balancing CEO responsibilities with parenting. She spoke about weekly dinners with Noah, attending his competitions, the conscious choice to turn down a promotion that would require more travel. Richard Stone attacked. Ms. Donovan, you work 60-hour weeks regularly. I work 50 hours during normal weeks, 60 during critical periods. And I work from home 3 days a week so I can be available for Noah. Yet your son spends significant time at Mr. Walker's residence. Because Mr. Walker's daughter is his best friend, they have playdates, normal childhood activities. And your romantic relationship with Mr. Walker, does that factor into these playdates? My relationship with Ethan developed naturally over time. It doesn't change the fact that our children are friends. Convenient? Not convenient. True. Claire's voice stayed level. My son is thriving. His grades are excellent. He's happy, well-adjusted, and secure. If Mr. Reeves were actually concerned about Noah's welfare instead of his child support obligation, he'd see that. The courtroom went silent. Richard Stone had no response that wouldn't make his client look worse. Ethan testified after lunch. Amanda walked him through the storm, the rescue, the developing friendship between the families. Richard Stone cross-examined with predictable attacks. Mr. Walker, you're playing father to Noah after knowing him 3 months. Ethan kept his voice calm. I'm not playing anything. I'm being there for a child who needs support. Support his biological father should provide? When a father chooses not to show up, someone has to. I'm honored to be that person. You don't think you're overstepping? I think I'm doing what any decent person would do.
Noah called me when he was stranded because he knew I'd come. That's not overstepping. That's being reliable. Richard shifted tactics. Mr. Walker, you lost your wife 3 years ago. Isn't it possible you're projecting your own need for family onto Noah and Mrs. Donovan? The question hit harder than expected. Ethan took a breath before answering. I loved my wife. I'll always love her. But that doesn't mean I can't build a new life. Rachel taught me that love doesn't divide, it multiplies. There's room in my heart for Sophie and Noah, for Claire and the memory of Emma. That's not projection. That's healing. Judge Rivera was watching him intently. Ethan met her eyes.
I can't replace Noah's father. I wouldn't want to. But I can be someone who shows up, who drives 40 miles when he needs help, who celebrates his robotics victories, who treats him like he matters. And if that's overstepping, then I'm guilty as charged. The courtroom was silent. Richard Stone had no follow-up questions. Then came the children. Noah took the stand, looking small and scared. Judge Rivera's voice was gentle. Noah, I know this is hard, but I need to understand what you want. Where would you like to live? With my mom? Noah's voice was clear despite his fear. Why? Because she loves me. Even when she's busy, she tries. Dad has a new family now. Your father loves you too. Noah's expression was too old for 9. I know he does, but I don't think he loves me the same way he loves Emma and Josh. When we have dinner at Dad's house, he talks to them about their stuff. When I try to talk about robotics, he's on his phone. The courtroom was absolutely still. Noah's voice gained strength. Last month, I won first place in my competition. I called Dad to tell him. He said, "That's great, bud. I'm in a meeting." Mr. Hayes wasn't even my dad yet, and he came to my competition. He cheered when I won. He took me and Sophie for ice cream after. Judge Rivera leaned forward. Do you like spending time at Mr. Hayes's house? Yes, ma'am, because Sophie's my best friend, and Mr. Hayes treats me like I matter. What about your mom's relationship with Mr. Hayes? How does that make you feel? Happy? Noah's answer was immediate. Because Mom smiles more now. She used to be sad a lot. Now she's happier. Thank you, Noah. You've been very brave. Sophie testified last. 7 years old, clutching her elephant, answering questions with the brutal honesty of childhood. How do you feel about Ms. Donovan? I like her. She makes my dad happy. After Mama died, Daddy was sad for a long, long time. He didn't smile much, but when Ms. Donovan comes over, he smiles. And I like seeing Daddy happy. What about Noah? Noah's my best friend. We build Legos, and he teaches me about robots. He's like the brother I never had. Do you want Noah to keep living with his mom? Yes, because if he lives with his dad, I won't see him anymore, and that would make me sad. Judge Rivera deliberated for exactly 10 minutes. When she returned, her expression was unreadable. I've heard compelling testimony from both sides, but my job is to determine what's in the best interest of the child. Mr. Reeves, you claim to love your son, but love is demonstrated through action, not words. You forgot his birthday. You missed his competitions. You left him stranded in a lobby while you had dinner with your new family. Meanwhile, Ms. Donovan, despite her demanding career, has consistently prioritized Noah. She's attended his events, maintained stable routines, and, yes, found a partner who treats her son with genuine care. And Mr. Hayes. The judge looked directly at Ethan. Though you're not Noah's biological father, you've demonstrated more paternal care in 3 months than Mr. Reeves has shown in recent years. The ruling is as follows. Ms. Donovan is awarded primary custody, increased to 80%.
Mr. Reeves will have visitation every other weekend plus one weekday evening. Child support is increased to $3,200 monthly, reflecting Mr. Reeves's income and limited involvement. Additionally, Mr. Reeves is required to complete 12 sessions of co-parenting counseling before any custody modification can be reconsidered. Michael's face went ashen. His lawyer tried to object, but the judge was already standing. This hearing is concluded. Claire pulled Noah into her arms, both of them crying. Ethan felt Sophie grab his hand, squeezing tight. Across the courtroom, Michael gathered his papers and left without looking at his son. Outside, in the Texas sunshine, Claire turned to Ethan with tears streaming down her face.
Thank you for fighting for us, for standing up there and telling the truth. We're family now. That's what family does. Family. Claire repeated the word like it was new. Is that what we are? If you'll have us. She kissed him there in the courthouse parking lot, not caring who saw. Sophie and Noah were already running ahead, chasing each other around the oak trees, the crisis forgotten in the way only children can forget. 6 months later, Ethan stood on the shore of Lake Somerville, watching Sophie and Noah build a sandcastle. They worked with the intense concentration of architects, Noah directing structure while Sophie added decorative flourishes. Behind him, Claire was setting up their picnic, humming something tuneless and happy. It was Noah's 10th birthday. They'd rented a cabin for the weekend, all 4 of them, testing the waters of this blended family they were building. Claire appeared at Ethan's side, sliding her arm around his waist. Penny for your thought.
Just thinking how different everything is from a year ago. Better different or worse different? Definitely better. He pulled her closer. Though I could do without the board meetings where Parker's replacement tries to be just as difficult. Claire laughed. At least Gregory doesn't hire private investigators. Low bar. Very low bar. She was quiet for a moment. Ethan, I need to tell you something. Her tone made him nervous. What? The board offered me a contract extension. 5 years as CEO, significant raise, expansion opportunity to Austin. That's incredible. I turned it down. Ethan pulled back to look at her face. You did what? I negotiated something better. Work from home 3 days a week, capped travel, guaranteed family time. Slightly smaller raise, but infinitely better quality of life. You chose family over ambition? I chose the right kind of ambition. Claire's voice was firm. I've spent years chasing promotions, thinking the next title would make me happy. It didn't.
This does. Dinner with Noah, weekends at the lake, building a life that includes work but isn't consumed by it. I'm proud of you. I learned from the best. She kissed him softly. You taught me that success isn't about what you achieve. It's about who you come home to. Sophie and Noah called them over to admire the finished castle. It was magnificent in its imperfection, towers listing slightly, moat half filled with lake water. The children stood beside it, beaming with pride. After they returned to the cabin and the children were asleep, Ethan and Claire sat on the porch, watching stars appear. I have something for you. Ethan pulled a small box from his pocket. Claire opened it to find a simple ring, white gold band with a small sapphire, the blue Rachel had loved. This was my grandmother's. She gave it to me before she died and told me to save it for the woman who made me believe in second chances. Ethan. Claire's voice caught. Claire Donovan, will you marry me? Not because it's convenient or logical, but because I love you. Because you make Sophie laugh, and you fight for Noah, and you opened your heart when it would have been safer to stay closed. Will you marry me? Yes. The word came out choked with tears. Yes. 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her while the stars wheeled overhead. Inside the cabin, they could hear Sophie and Noah stirring, probably woken by the excitement. Within seconds, both children were on the porch, eyes huge. "Are you getting married?" "We are." Claire was laughing and crying at once. Sophie and Noah erupted in cheers, dancing around the porch. Ethan pulled all of them into a group hug. This family they'd built from storm wreckage and second chances. Later, after the children were settled again, Claire showed Ethan the drawing Sophie had made. The four of them standing in front of Ethan's house, holding hands.
And in the corner, sketched in careful detail, a woman with a scarf watching from a cloud.
"This is our family," Sophie had written underneath in purple crayon. "And Mama's watching over us." Claire traced the image with her finger. "Do you think Emma would approve?" Ethan looked at the stars, thinking about the woman who'd taught him to help people even when it was hard, who'd made him promise not to let the world make him bitter, who'd wanted nothing more than for him to be happy. I think she'd say I was an idiot for falling for my boss, but she'd approve. She always believed in second chances. Rachel did too. Claire leaned her head on his shoulder. She believed people could change, could grow, could become better versions of themselves. Look at us, growing and changing and getting better together. They sat in the darkness, listening to the lake lap at the shore. Tomorrow they'd pack up and drive home, back to work and school and the complicated reality of blending two families.
There would be challenges ahead. Difficult conversations about discipline and boundaries and how to honor the past while building the future. But tonight, they had this: peace, hope, the certainty that whatever came next, they'd face it together. The storm that brought Claire to Ethan's door had destroyed her car, her certainty, her carefully constructed life. But it had built something stronger in the ruins. Not just a relationship, but a family. Not just survival, but a chance to thrive. Sophie appeared at the door one more time, clutching her elephant. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby?" "I'm glad you opened the door that night, even though Miss Donovan was mean to you before." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Because now, we're a family." Sophie's logic was unassailable. "And families help each other, just like Mama taught us." Just like Mama taught us. Sophie padded back to bed. Ethan and Claire sat watching stars and planning their future. A wedding to arrange, a house to combine or sell,
Children to raise, careers to balance, a life to build from the ashes of what they'd lost and the hope of what they'd found. The storm had passed long ago, but its gift remained, and they were never letting go.